Welcome back to episode 93 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here as always with Adam.
Hello.
And Cam.
Hey.
And returning guest of the show, Canadian icon, Phil Sams.
What up?
And we're a group of auto-based players that play just about anything and everything you can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
We'll see about that.
Doubt it.
Maybe.
Also, Halifax-based player. Come on, don't lump him in. He's going to be mad.
Oh, yeah.
He's now moved, so...
Former Ottawa-based player.
I'm no longer one of you guys.
Yeah.
And now he's out here running the shops on the East Coast.
Doing what I can.
Looking out for the East Coast scene.
We got a lot to talk about today.
Yes, busy day because Pro Tour is this weekend.
It is Pro Tour 25, team event, first team Pro Tour in how many years?
I don't know, 1 billion.
Million years.
Since
before I was born.
Yeah, since forever. There was an SCG Modern that had some throwback matchups.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Pro Tour, and we're going to talk about, some aggro decks because the smart god Phil Sams is here visiting, so.
Yeah.
If you like playing red, this is an episode for you.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's a big Steel Leaf champion guy as well.
Well, and yeah, not necessarily just red, aggro in general.
Yeah,
Because
it doesn't have to be mountains, although I do love them. But yeah, give me some Steel Leaf champions. I'm about that too.
yeah, because I mean the best aggro deck right now is green.
Just beating people down, taking their milk money.
All right, so we did have an SCG in Indianapolis this past weekend, won by Jund.
Yeah. If you would have told me, it's modern actually. So yeah, I'd have been like, oh yeah, of course. But at the same time, the finals was Burn and Modern, Burn and Jund, which
Yeah.
it's like,
I feel like trying to predict modern metagames is not too far removed from reading tea leaves. It's just like this mess of maybe a pattern that people like try and look for things in.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, he beat humans, he beat Tron,
yeah, that's wild that Jund's
and
out
he
there
beat
beating
Burn.
See, I mean, Burn, I think, is actually, I think it's actually an okay matchup for rock decks. I actually think it's favored, given like a couple Inquisitions in your opening hand.
Okay.
You have like on Inquisition, and then like you draw a Scavenging Ooze, and the game's just over. Like,
I think a lot has to go right for the rock players, but like they definitely have draws that shape up. But if they don't have their exact like sequences,
yeah,
then like Burn just has to just not flood out basically.
Yeah. I mean, this guy has one collective brutality in his 75. And
that's wrong.
Yeah. Well, this guy has to be a dog against Burn, and then just.
But he's got Huntmaster.
He probably just drew well, or the Burn player drew poorly, and that's what you get when you have a variant sample size of one match. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you win bad matchups.
yeah.
I think the versions that play like multiple collective brutality though throughout the list have a pretty easy, like not easy, but they draw them and the match just completely changes.
I mean, it certainly helps the matchup.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I played a lot of rock decks like over the last couple of years, and like I never really have a hard time with Burn.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
What
But
about,
I
what
also
about Tron?
hate,
You ever beat Tron?
no, God no.
Well, this guy did.
I also I hate Burn, so I always come packing like at least a little extra hate for him.
Man, I'm pretty sure
Because I don't have to go buy ice cream after I lose.
Yeah, why you hate Burn when you get ice cream if you lose? It's great.
He,
That's a win-win.
he beat them on the draw in game one, Tron. He won the match and he just was like fist pumping. Right?
How unlucky did this Tron player get?
Pretty unlucky. He had,
I didn't watch it, but you did. So
he had the Tron, full Tron. He just needed to draw a threat to win immediately, and then he never did. Died to Tarmogoyf. Yeah, it happens.
The Goyf boys will get you.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think.
Tron.
Couple humans lists in the top 8 too, adopting the old bugler.
Yeah, so this was something that pretty much started happening immediately after Bugler was printed. It just kind of replaced all your weird one-off slots and the flex slots in humans.
Yeah.
So you don't see Resto Angel anymore, that kind of card. You just you don't need it anymore. You just play 4 Bugler and then 4/3 Buglers. And
I always read that card as burglar. Is that what you're burgling? Give me that. I'll take that.
yeah, obviously it's a card humans wants access to. It
Well, like Phil mentioned before the show, it shores up, rough matchups. Like the decks that want to 1-for-1 you out of the game, like you have a source of card advantage built in. It gives you creature selection.
Yeah, and I mean, it finds your sideboard cards too that you're bringing in. So like
it's a huge card for the deck.
yeah, it's exactly what this deck wanted.
Yeah, like I know it's an obvious inclusion, but is this one of the fastest like new cards a modern deck has adapted?
That just slotted right in and had immediate results, probably.
Right, because like other very obvious inclusions, it takes people forever to get around to trying them.
Nope.
Well, I mean, there was the Karn Affinity in the top 8 too, finally.
You guys
That
remember?
took a hot minute.
You remember Ulamog? Remember that card?
Oh, yeah.
That was slotted in immediately.
Yeah, because they were replacing just playing a random smattering of the old worse Eldrazi. They just swapped out like an obvious replacement, right? Like this was like a whole card that changes like how the deck functions. But yeah, it's a cool inclusion and it gives the deck, like you said, a lot of consistency. It makes sideboard options really powerful.
Like if they print like a single red mana, do 4 to any target, I'm not going to be surprised if that replaces Bolt. Or augments it. Like that one's not going to shock me.
Yeah, that's basically Ulamog in the Tron.
Yeah, but aside from that, this top 8, there was another new deck that kind of popped out of nowhere. Blue-Red Wizards, Delver of Secrets, playable again in Modern for the first time since Treasure Cruise.
Yeah, I mean, 4 Nimble Obstructionist main in this deck, 4 Wizards Lightning. Yeah, the 8 lightning bolts, man. I mean, 8 lightning bolts in Modern is that's a lot.
Yeah, not much damage that is.
I don't know. I can't
Cam, how much damage is that?
I want to say 24.
I think it's 24. Yeah,
That's a lot of damage.
Someone get a calculator.
It's a lot of damage, guys.
Yeah, I mean, this deck's interesting. I don't know how good it is. Like the 1-of spell stutter sprite kind of cracks me up. the 2, yeah,
It's a wizard.
What other fairies are in the deck? There's
It doesn't matter. It's a wizard.
2 Cleek.
you just 2 Cleek and it's
Well,
Nimble's.
I mean, Cleek is a wizard.
Nimble's a bird, right? Nimble Obstructionist.
Bird wizard.
It's a bird wizard. They're all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a fairy.
I mean, is Sprite good enough if it can counter a lightning bolt or a Thoughtseize or an Inquisition? Like, how many fairies do you really need for it to
Just
be
that
good?
one. Then.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
and it's a
Who's
wizard.
going to play around 1 spell sputter?
Yeah. I mean, I played a lot of that card in Pauper.
Yeah.
No, people expect it there and it's still good.
Yeah.
And you have 4 Mutavaults. They're all wizards too.
Oh yeah,
And they're fairies.
that's
And
actually
fairies. There you
that's actually nuts.
There it is, guys.
That's just good deck building. Actually.
Activate Vault.
Yeah.
Flash in this spell stutter.
The real. We talked about this before we started recording, and the real boon here for Bugler to Modern though is obviously the Felidar Guardian Saheeli combo.
Yeah, obviously.
Just extra consistency to a deck that was borderline tier 0.
Probably it's just new twin, right? I mean, it's there's
Just
literally no difference.
So much worse.
No, Bugler finds your guys nuts. Kiki Jiki, you can find your Kiki Jiki off Bugler. You can go get your Pester Mites.
You're right.
Just get them. You can go get your Felidar Guardian. Get your, can't get Saheeli, but whatever.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of mishmash cards that will maybe infinite combo, and you have no real plan B, but playing some 2/2s and some 2/1s.
I don't
Sounds
know
like
how
you're
that
ready
could
to
go
play
wrong.
some Modern.
What could go wrong, honestly?
I mean, if you're ready to play some Modern, be sure to head to the Wizard Tower this Saturday for their 2K Modern Open.
Yeah. Pro Tour Wizards Tower this
Did you
weekend.
like how I lined that one up for you?
Oh, yeah.
2K store credit event. 4 rounds of Modern, 3 rounds of draft, cut to top 8, which is also Modern.
Yeah.
Fantastic event. I'm sure you guys will go play in it while I'm at work.
I'm going to be in Alberta.
Cam is out of the province.
You'll go play in it.
I am borrowing your Tron deck.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to go cast some Karens.
Yeah.
I'm just going to brain dead mull to a perfect Tron hand and just Karn someone on 3.
It feels good, man.
That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to remember the lesson to Mog Squad their lands.
Always.
Just take their lands away and then just walk on down.
Yep.
There's not much that, there's not many creatures or permanents that could be left on board that an Ulamog can't deal with
Yeah.
if they don't have lands.
Or should I play Living End, Phil? Is that...
Never ever play Living End. That is the most brain dead deck in the history of Magic the Gathering.
We were talking about different brain dead decks. And yeah, I think that one is up. Yeah. Maybe I should play it. I'm pretty dumb. Maybe I'll play Living End, actually.
Well, at least if you play Living End, you get to go out drinking the night before.
Yeah. Brain dead, Living End. Perfect. It's just on theme.
For this episode?
It's probably the perfect DWC deck, really.
I'm just confused. I don't know. You just put a bunch of 4/4s into play. Your turn. Next turn, your dad attack you. Got him.
No backup plan. Don't need it.
Yeah. Hard cast this 4/4, I guess. There's also a limited GP the last weekend, but it doesn't matter. It's not even a Pro Tour format for this Pro Tour, so
Yeah, who
whatever.
cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
Of course, that limited is sweet. Moving on.
Yeah, it is awesome.
We drafted it last week.
Yeah, we did draft last week.
You 4-0'd.
I did.
It was sweet.
Real fun time.
Yeah, how'd you do?
Cam got crumpled.
I got a bye in the last round, which I earned by going 0-3.
Well done.
Yeah, I mean, when I was 0-2, I figured, maybe I could pull it at 2-2, but then I just died to like multiple active treasons. I'm like behind and then like play a 6-6 to try and like block and right. No, what happened? He played a demanding dragon.
Yeah.
And all I had was 2/2 drops. So I had to sack one because otherwise I don't have enough time to draw into an answer. So I'm not finding an answer, so I'm attempting to race him. So I like attack with my guys for like 4 or 5, expecting him to attack me down to 5. And then I played the dinosaur, the 6/6. Colossal Dreadmaw. Thinking that like I'll go to 5 and then like if I draw an answer
boy.
and can kill a blocker, like I can maybe win this race. But no, I got active treason and I took like 30.
Nah, I guess
Nice.
the best was he got active treasoned and then pre-combat trumpet blasted.
Oh, yeah,
even
yeah.
though
Eh.
it was already lethal
Died
without
anyway.
it, but because everyone who doesn't read trumpet blasts or reads it quickly forgets that it's attacking creatures. You gotta cast that card in combat.
Well,
Like active treason just slams trumpet blast and serves. I'm like right on. It's just laughing beside him.
dead anyway.
Is there anything better in this world than the defensive trumpet blast?
It's just sound the alarm, like, oh no, they're coming in, blow the trumpets.
Let them know how dead we are. Yeah, it was a good one. Yeah, like you were like, I just played these like aggro decks active treasoning me, and then my experience.
Yeah, you had a grindy deck and played a bunch of grindy mirrors.
Yeah.
And I had a deck that I thought could take advantage of grindy decks because it had like a bit of recursion, but it also could like any one threat could kind of snowball because it had that like the green-blue flyer that put counters on things. Like had some big 6/6s, but not just played against aggro decks all night and got crumpled.
Well, it was actually a combo deck. You see, I had the combo of Macabre Waltz, Salvager. What's that card?
Salvager of
Salvager
Secrets.
Yeah, Salvager of Secrets and Gravedigger. So you see is for 9 or so mana per turn, you can chump block forever. That's the infinite
What
combo.
a deal.
They kill your Salvager, you Gravedigger it back,
For 1 less mana,
play it out, you block with your Gravedigger, then you Macabre Waltz, discard a land, play out your guy, get back your Macabre Waltz,
How are you supposed to
block
lose?
with your 2/2, play your Gravedigger, get back your
but
back
Adam,
your guy, get back your Macabre Waltz. Yeah, you just sit there forever. It's great.
if we're looking to chump block, I got a deal for you. Instead of 9 mana, this one only costs 8, and you can chump block 4 times if you have 4 resembling skeletons.
Holy.
Yeah, that card is great. Big
That,
fan.
that does.
Phil just looks in pain. There's
mean-
nothing more Phil hates than just a dirtle do nothing deck doing its thing.
That card is designed to make it so I can never win games of limited.
Yeah.
That does require one more card though. When Adam's combo only requires 3, so
No, because it also requires 1 less land.
Oh yeah.
So you have to have drawn the same
so
number
they're
of cards.
so then they're even
Yeah.
on cards.
Yeah. Yeah, it balances out. Mine's way sweeter.
Yours is off
Because-
counter spells.
True. I also to discard because I had my Gravedigger and I was waiting, and then they played the Symbiote, the 3/3 flyer that you discard a card, and interrupted my infinite recursion combo, and I lost.
Rats.
Hate to see that house of cards crumble.
You hate to see it, man. Yeah, it was a beating. Won that match though.
Of course.
Got him in the other games. Learned my lesson. Get the land, an extra land in hand. Needed 2. 1 for that guy. 1 for the Macabre Waltz. The 1-2 punch. Getting it done. All right.
So like we normally do for pre-Pro Tour episodes, we generally give our predictions for what we think will top 8 the event. This time around, it's a little different, though.
It's a bit of a wacky format
because
for those who don't know.
We have Legacy, we have Modern, we have Standard, and it's only a top 4.
So team event, yeah.
So I don't know. Do you guys want to predict what decks will top 4, or do you want to predict the winners?
The pride goes to whoever gets the closest, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'd say we make predictions for winners, and then, I don't know, we come up with some sort of construed method of comparing how close to our prediction for the winning was across showing up in the top 4.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
mean, there's going to be 4 Standard decks, 4 Modern decks, and 4 Legacy decks.
yeah, whoever is closest to the finals with whatever decks you.
Yeah, like say
All right.
say you pick a
Yes.
deck to be in the finals, and it doesn't get in the finals, but there was 2 of it in the top 4, that's about the same.
Yeah, if no one else guessed a finals deck as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
you won. You know what I mean? So we can do that.
We can come up with some sort of point system.
We can also just talk about afterwards what we think is going to probably top 4, but we can
Yeah.
make our winner predictions.
All right, you guys want to start? Stelly?
Yeah, I could start. So in Modern, I think KCI is going to win. In Standard, I think it's going to be Blue-Black, Splash Grixis. And in Legacy,
You mean Splash Bolus?
Splash Bolus, yeah. Splash Grixis. Legacy. Legacy's the only one I'm not sure of. We'll say Lands. It's gonna be Lands.
God, why are you stealing 2 of my 3?
What do you think, Adam?
Let Cam go first.
All right.
Okay, I was going to say, like Grix is like Blue-Black Bolus in Standard and Lands in Legacy. But you took 2 of those. So now I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of which one I want to change. I don't know enough about Legacy, so I'm also going to go with Lands. For Standard, I'm going to say, let's say one of these green aggro decks. Let's get crazy.
Mono green, sure.
I don't think it will, but you took Bolus. And
Hey,
maybe if
possible.
if a bunch of people think as you do and bring Bolus decks, might just crumple people. But if it does win, it's going to be because it has more Vinemare's main than people have been playing.
Yeah, my hot take was going to be a green deck because everyone who thinks that the Blue-Black Splash Bolus deck is playable versus Vine Mares is just going to get laughed out
Right,
of the ballpark.
but it has been playable because they've been like 3 Vinemares in the sideboard. So then you
Yeah.
can like win game 1 and then get lucky one of the next 2. But yeah, like 4 Vinemare's main is going to be in Standard. And then Modern, dude, I have no idea.
We got to make a guess.
Yeah, I got to make a guess. I don't think KCI because I don't think Matt Nass's team, like I think it's either the winning team is either going to be Peach Garden Oath, Reed Duke, Owen Turtenwall, and Huey, or
But you don't think those guys will realize how busted KCI is?
or Paulo Viter's deck.
If you
team.
think that Reed won't play Jund
Right, exactly.
in Modern,
Do you think he's playing Modern?
he will play Modern, Owen will play Legacy, and Huey will play Standard.
Yeah, he'll probably play Green Black Rock.
Yeah.
That's what he brought to the last Pro Tour and top 8'd, right?
Some
Reed?
Yeah.
Jund
I
or
think he plays
Junk.
Jund.
You think he'll play Jund instead of Green Black?
I think there's like a nostalgia factor for him. Like this is the 25th anniversary. It's a team thing. Like he's gonna pick a
Okay.
deck he knows and loves. And he also recently top forward the Modern Challenge on Moto with Jund after trying out Mardu Pyromancer because Jund was so bad. And then he was like, whatever. And then he went back to Jund being like, I'm just gonna take it out for a run. Then he top forward, lost the Living End, which is is a matchup you can never win as Jund. Like actually, like you can beat Tron, you know what I mean, with Jund clearly, but you cannot beat Living End. Like I don't think it's possible. I think it's Jund's worst matchup. Like actually, I just don't see how you win ever in a million years.
I don't know, man.
Like Phil, like thoughts on this? I don't think you can win, right?
It's very hard. Like maybe if you were in a good place to play like Layla Under the Void.
And have it and
Yeah.
have a bunch of other stuff line up.
But like the reason Living End is good is because it just dunks on those creature decks. Like
Yeah.
the mid-range creature decks. Like,
Yeah. It's so unfair for them.
yeah. Like
I mean, the deck was brought into existence, but I wasn't playing at the time, but you were, and this is why I was asking. I was like, the deck was brought into existence, correct, when Jund was at its
well,
peak?
I mean it's been around for a while, but like
Yeah, like 2011.
But yeah, it feasts on like the mid-range creature decks. Like you can go under it pretty like sometimes. Like you force them to have the turn 3 Living End kind of deal. But like the decks like Mardu, like Jund, like Hollow One, yeah, like Living End just feasts on these decks. Even humans to an extent. Like just these decks that don't really like have the disruption for the graveyard.
Yeah. And to deal with just sweeper after sweeper if they need it, you know, and to a board they just can't be. Like 4/4s are huge in Modern.
They got to struggle with Meddling Mage, though, right? Just naming Living End.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fair.
Well, it's realistically, it's like Meddling Mage off of Aether Vial because like you saw the decks from this weekend, they had a bunch of Dead Gons in their sideboard, so like they're set up to
They had a bunch of whats?
the split card Dead Gone,
Which deck had this?
the Living End deck in the sideboard.
Let me see this card. Oh, I don't see it. Oh, there it is. What does this do? 2 damage to target creature or return target creature you don't control to its owner's hand.
Yeah, so it lines up against all like the hate creatures.
Okay.
So it's where the humans deck can just have it sitting in their hand with Aether Vial. So like they cast their Demonic Dread or whatever, then they flash in the Meddling Mage name Living End, and then they just brick because they generally don't have the mana up to do both.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Pete actually was mentioning this. Like, they can play this card now, Dead and Gone, because of the split card CMC rules change. You can cascade past it.
Really?
Because I
whereas-
couldn't play it before, but now it counts as CMC4.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's interesting. What a wacky place Modern is. Okay, so your prediction was
So, yeah, I'm going to go with lands, green with a bunch of Vine Mare's Mane in Standard, and then for Modern, I don't know. I'm going to say fair deck. I'll say Mardu Pyromancer.
Boring.
mono green stompy or
I don't know. Just 4 Vine Mares.
4 Vine Mare's green main?
Yeah.
All right. Phil?
First of all, I hope that this Pro Tour gets something in the KCI deck band. I've personally been going for both Mox Opal and Ancient Stirrings. I'll take one of them.
Yeah, Opal's fine with me.
I don't think they'll ever ban Mox Opal, mostly because it's so expensive, but I would love for both of those cards to be banned. Stelly hates me for it.
Come on, man. Why can't you let me have any fun?
I think you've had enough.
Clearly not.
So yeah,
Sir, you're making a scene.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. I mean, so yeah, I'm on the KCI train, but if I have to pick a deck that hasn't already been picked,
You don't have to.
I'll go with the boring route and pick humans because I think Bugler shored up a lot of how you beat that deck.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Obviously, in Standard, I'm picking red black. I just like I think we can all agree Scrap Heap Scrounger's winning this Pro Tour like it's won every other Pro Tour as long as it's been in Standard.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I was asking mono green or splashing Scrounger. I was trying to get a clarification out of you.
Yeah, definitely Splashing Scrounger.
Tried to give you a hint. Tried to give you the free win here.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't want to take it because I think Vine Mare is what's going to carry it through all the like people thinking black mid-range decks is good. And like Scrounger's powerful, yeah, but it's going to win off the back of main deck Vine Mares. Because like the green deck with Scroungers has been around before, but it always stumbles just a bit too much to top 8 a long event.
Yeah.
Oh.
So red, black, and standard. Humans, modern.
The thing with the green deck too is like having Vinemare and Scrounger just puts you in such a good place against like slower decks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's just wild. So yeah. Legacy, I know almost nothing about Legacy, but I'm going to pick Grixis Delver because that deck has Bomek Courier in it, and in a perfect world, Bomek Courier would win in all 3 formats.
What modern deck could play it?
There was a mono red deck that had it.
Yeah,
There's
I think
also
I remember seeing
Affinity trying it out too.
it.
Yeah, Affinity had it.
Yikes.
Seen a couple different things. Nothing that's actually like gained traction, but man, I would love to see that. That card is great.
Yeah. And you, Adam?
So this is like the toughest decision for me stems from Legacy, in which I'm not sure how good Delver is anymore.
Okay.
And so this is like the hinge on my picks of like, what do I pick for Legacy? Because
Why
like,
isn't it good anymore?
I'm not sure is what I'm saying. Like I haven't played enough. So like part of me wants to say like, I think Stoneblade decks went back to having a good Delver matchup. When they had Deathrite, they did not. But I think Stoneblade decks have a good Delver matchup. But I don't think Stoneblade decks can ever beat Unfair decks. Like, I don't think they can beat Storm. It's like a gamble. Like, I want to say Storm and Legacy. Like, I want to say an Unfair deck that hasn't really seen that much play in the last couple of years and done, but is like insanely powerful and will just crumple lands. You know what I mean? Decks like that show up. Like fair decks that have no interaction and have no right being there if Deathrite didn't exist, basically.
All right.
And Delver decks keeping Storm out of the format. So like if the format moves in a direction in which Delver isn't that good or can beat whatever, like the Stoneforge decks, like they're not beating Storm. They don't have the pressure and interaction to do it. Like the Stoneblade decks just like Thoughtseize isn't enough. You know what I mean? Like your 4 Force of Wills and that's it. That's not enough. You need Daze, Stifle, right?
Sure, all
It's
right.
not like Rug Delver's coming back. Maybe it does actually.
I don't know. Who knows? It's a pro tour.
You know what? Maybe I should just say Rug Delver because like clearly has a good Lance matchup.
50-50.
50-50. Which not even close. It's like a horrible matchup for Rug Delver, but Rug Delver, you know, has an insane combo matchup. Like that's why the deck's good.
Mm-hmm.
Old Canadian threshold. Maybe it makes a comeback. Maybe people, you know, but
So you're gonna predict Rug Delver?
I really don't know. It's between that and like Storm. I think Stoneblade actually is overrepresented in Legacy at this tournament.
Okay.
Because people are dumb and love playing like fair decks that they think are good against the field that aren't actually good against the field. Yeah, I mean, you've played Stoneblade. Like,
It sucks.
tell me how it was for you,
not
quote
fun at
unquote,
all.
versus the field.
It was horrible.
You know, it would be sweet if, man, you guys don't know anything about Legacy. You can't even talk about, but like, it would be sweet to see Eldrazi come back and stomp somebody.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, Legacy's pretty
Just
wide
the
open.
colorless, like Eye of Ugin Eldrazi.
Yeah, like Legacy, like that could definitely happen at this Pro Tour very easily, especially because of a card availability issue, right? Like, how much are duels right now? How much are Underground Sea?
Well, hasn't there been an Eldrazi deck doing well on Moto?
I think,
Like,
yeah, there has been.
with like Cloud Post and other nonsense like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. That deck.
I think that's a real deck.
No, it did exist before the domination of Check Pile, like Leovold Legacy. That deck was very good and consistently played, and then just like disappeared during Check Pile days.
Like I said, I know
Because of Baleful Strix, right?
Obviously. Like I said, I know almost nothing about Legacy, but like I'm on social media enough that I see enough nonsense tweets. It's like, oh, just dunked on this person with Reality Smasher.
Yeah, so there's like all these issues, and I think that deck like beats Storm and can beat Lance. So I don't know, man, it's tough. Okay, I'm not predicting Rug Delver because that's suicidal.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick Eldrazi for Legacy.
All right.
For Modern, I'm gonna pick Storm.
Storm
Yep.
in Modern.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, in my heart of hearts, my prediction, if I was like the true Chad, I would have gone Storm. Storm and Legacy, Storm and Modern, and Paradox Club gone like, you know,
Okay.
Storm and Standard, because that would be like the ballsiest pick.
Yeah.
And it would be hilarious to play.
You really think Storm will have a good weekend?
Yep.
Why?
I think that deck's still good. I think it's really good. I think
But what about humans?
it's fine. Like,
But like, what decks have been doing well recently? Like Tron has made a comeback, has like been around recently. Humans, people trying. I've seen new Affinity lists. Affinity did well. Like fair decks. Like, how many people are playing? Like, none of those really need that much graveyard hate. Like, what? Who's playing Storm hate?
Well, humans as a deck is Storm hate.
yeah, it's like
Sure.
you can't win that matchup.
Why would you want to play Storm when KCI is probably like the number one target?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know. I just
it's
think
just a
people
faster
like show up
deck.
with Storm though. Like,
I mean, probably like every PT people have shown up
Alright,
with
fine.
Storm and they've had horrible finishes except for a few outliers.
I'm gonna make this prediction on hoping to get more viewers next week. So my prediction for Legacy is Eldrazi.
Yeah.
Modern is Hardened Scales Affinity.
Nice. Okay.
Because maybe somebody was like, hey, this Hemsley guy's the moto leader in trophies. What has he been playing? And then they realize he's just been killing everyone on turn 3 with Hardened Scales Affinity.
All right.
That's a better choice than Storm, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny. Well, it's basically a
Sweet.
Storm deck.
No, it's not. It's good pure creatures.
And then in Standard,
How many in the winning standard list? How many cartouche do you think they're playing?
16. Part of me wants to say something wacky like Antiquities War here because, like, you know, one of your predictions you joked wanted to be like someone just gets carried, you know, like some junk Stitcher.
That's what because like there hasn't been that many standard events. We haven't seen that much like development of the format. Yeah, my like secondary prediction was that 1 or 2 of the top 4 standard decks look unplayably bad, and the subreddit communities for Magic are going to try and dissect what's actually going on here. What aren't we understanding? Why are these decks good? And they just got carried the entire tournament.
The thing I'd really like to see in Modern is if people figure out those like Stitcher Supplier dredge decks.
Oh yeah, the Vengevine decks. Those look really good.
If those are good, they're going to be like absurdly good.
Yeah,
If someone
yeah.
like figures it out,
Man, how did you not root for empty boys here, Cam, in Modern?
Because I don't know. I feel like that deck will be like one, or it'll like lose its win it in.
Yeah.
Like it's a bit too much variance. Although it is less rounds now. It's not really because you took out a bunch of limited. So yeah, like it's
It's actually
14
more
rounds.
constructed rounds.
it's more constructed, right? So like its chances go like down.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love Hollow One. I'm always worried with team tournaments where people just make safe choices. So you may see less of a deck like Hollow One,
Yeah.
just because, like, I'm not sure how much of it's actually fact, but it seems like a lot of team tournaments you just see like the most safe choices, and they always just gravitate to the top. Like, it's always just like red black in the first seat, humans in the second seat, some Delver deck in the third seat.
Yeah.
It's just like the most boring experience possible because everyone's just like, oh, let's play this safe deck we know is super good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's what we were talking about last week about how people don't play Tron
Yeah.
at team events, even though like the win rate on Tron in Modern is actually very high.
Mhm.
Like its win percentages are among the highest in the format. It's
I think
shocking that
yeah.
people. I'm surprised you didn't vote for Tron.
I mean, well, I just think KCI, I think more pros will gravitate towards KCI than they'll gravitate towards Tron.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of players pick up Tron because it's very good right now. It has a lot of good matchups. You know, maybe players are expecting a lot of other players to play safe and play like rock decks, and then you plan to step over those dead bodies. But yeah, I just thought KCI seemed like a choice that more people would gravitate towards.
Okay, my prediction for standard. I'll make a fun one, I guess. Not what I think. We can talk about after what we think. Well, you know what I mean. Like,
All right, what do you think?
I'm gonna say a Sarkin deck with
Sarkin.
4 Glorybringer, 4 Bolus.
That would
And
be
a bunch
sweet.
of removal. Possibly Dragon's Hordes.
All right.
That's my prediction.
Okay.
Not actually.
That's your hope.
Yeah, I think that deck's actually pretty sweet, but or I could say like Sifter Worm. That would be hilarious. I would like to see Sifter Worm. That's my backup plan. I think that deck's actually really good. But I think I think what's going to happen is just going to be a bunch of like blue-black splash Bolus decks versus a bunch of fine mare decks.
We get any Gigantosauruses?
The dream, man. Sarkin's Unsealing into Gigantosaurus Plague when you take 4. That deck is hype. You don't like it because it's gimmicky, but it is sweet.
I am shocked that wasn't your like snap prediction.
Yeah. Well, trying to keep it fresh and unpredictable,
I mean, yeah, sure.
But I think it's like gonna just be a bunch of like green decks. Like in general, I think the Pro Tour is just gonna be a bunch of green decks and a bunch of Bolus decks.
Yeah, I actually don't agree with that.
Really?
I think it's going to be a bunch of red decks and a bunch of Bolus decks.
Okay, yeah, well, that's fine. You don't think green shows up?
I think it shows up less. Like, I think that as the red deck, you can beat the green deck if you build your deck like with it in mind. Like when the green deck was like running over the red deck, they had like no cut to ribbons. They had like 2 unlicensed disintegrations, and they were like the Glory Bringers were in their sideboard.
So it's like red black specifically you're talking about here.
Yeah. I think the red deck like with On-Crop Crasher can just like push through enough damage, but I think red black will be probably the number 1 standard deck at the Pro Tour. And I think it will be built with like the green decks in mind. So they have their cut to ribbons. They have like
Glory Bringers.
like the list of red black I've been playing is Edgar's deck from the last Star City. He has 3 Glorybringer main and 1 in the side. Like he's ready.
Yeah, you got to deal 4 damage steel leaves.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just like, and you have to go over like they're just nonsense on the ground. Like when you're building your deck with the green deck in mind, like as a red deck, like you just have so many good cards that like you can just build your deck to beat anything, and that's been the issue with the red deck the whole time Hazard's been in the format.
Yeah, that you just have a plethora of options, right? Like the red deck has just the most powerful thing at every curve. Like we've been saying this for months.
Well, I mean, it's why like Jund was so dominant in Modern for so long. Like once you had your target, you built your deck to beat it, and even if it was a quote unquote bad matchup, you were ready for it and you beat it because that was the target.
Yeah, red black is excellent at adapting actually. Like its ability to shift gears in the sideboard. Like we've something we talked about like 30 episodes ago is like abilities for decks to pivot, right? And like that's how you always know when there's a deck that's just like absolutely dominant, right? Like it can pivot in what it's doing. And yeah, red black is an aggro deck that can change directions very well.
It's been like a common conversation throughout the formats in which red black is dominated, where people ask like, do you like this more aggressive red black version? Do you like this more mid range? How many black sources should I play? Like, do I like this? Do I like arguing over which version's the best? And I guess, yeah, ultimately, like in the end, it's just, well, what do you want to beat? And then answering that tells you which red black version to play.
Speaking of red decks, we're going to be talking about aggro today.
Yeah, well, like this is actually a really good
Yeah, we kind of like just started naturally.
segue into what we wanted to talk about with Phil being on the format, which is like broadly assessing sort of how to build your red, like and how you play red decks and how you assess certain situations in formats.
Yeah, kind of like what we were saying. Like in general, say you've already picked a target, or you're looking at a format and you think like there are these decks I'm going to play against and want to beat. How do you pick out which cards in those decks matter if you're a red player? And I kind of approached this like got to this topic the other way around. For a while, we talked about the sort of common knowledge that was thrown around the community for a bit, that cards like Scarab God or cards like Torrential Gearhulk were a bit too slow when red-black was around. I don't think we ever agreed with this, but people said it a lot, saying that if you played these cards, they would get abraded if it was like the Gearhulk, or it would get unlicensed, or for some reason your 5 or 6 mana play would be removed, and then aggro would have enough pressure on the board that you would die. So you can't afford to tap out for something like this that doesn't have a lot of immediate impact. So then I had the question of, is that true? How does that actually feel? Like, do red players agree with this? Do they think that they can ignore these cards? Which types of cards do they think they can ignore, and what are they actually worried about? And not just red, but aggro in general. Yeah, we got Phil on here to elaborate.
Yeah, well, I think like in some ways, like he's sort of preemptively answered the question in the sense of like, well, what you have to do. Okay, you can talk about like how you assess the threat, like what cards constitute a threat to a red deck is like maybe the first step, but like you've already answered the follow-up, which was, well, you sort of treat aggro, it's funny, people always treat like mid-range and control decks like, well, they can beat everything once they adapt, right? Well, aggro decks actually do the same thing.
Yeah, well, like aggro decks do it, and they do it better because like you get to like punish when your opponent stumbles or like leads on like tap land, like, and like that's always been like the appeal to me is just like you have these aggressive decks, but they also have these cards where like if you go to like turn 6, 7, 8, like you're still just on top of them.
Yeah. So like, how do you what cards like in aggressive decks are you worried about though that you have to change your deck? What is it like? Let's say you go blind into a format of week 1 format and you have like an aggressive deck, and you just generally pack, a generic aggressive strategy. How do you identify which cards you're concerned about? Like, is it Lyra's or is it Scarab Gods? Like, which one? You know what I mean? Like, how do you assess which one is more threatening when building your deck?
I mean, obviously the answer is both. The difference is that like with Lyra, if you kill it, it's gone. If you don't kill it, there are still things you can do. With Scarab God, if you kill it, it comes back, and then you have this like very narrow window. So if you don't kill it and they untap, then they start making an army, and then you could just never win. Whereas Lyra, you can like kill it, or like you can just like start using your small removal spells when they block to like make it so they don't gain life.
Like to shoot your own guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if they hit you once and then you draw an answer, they don't just have an army behind it again, right?
Right. And that's why Scarab God is different, because if they untap with it, like their board is just going to outnumber you almost immediately.
Yeah, they get back one of your PNLRs, it's a real feel bad.
Yeah.
They get 2 blockers out of it. One's a 4/4.
But like that's also the thing where like Cam brought up Torrential Gearhulk, and that's like obviously just the worst card possible against an aggressive deck. Like it's just very slow. Like 6 versus 5 is a huge deal. It turning on the abrades that are almost never turned on.
Yeah, or the unlicensed
is massive. Like unlicensed is going to be turned on eventually.
Yeah, it's going to tag a Scarab God.
Yeah, like you're going to have a target eventually, but these abrades that are just rotting in my hand, I finally get to use it. Like,
yeah, I think that's totally fair. So we're kind of, when we're evaluating the threats that we have to play against, how fast that card stabilizes them is, kind of one of the first things that we're looking at, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of interesting that you would think on surface, like, well, Lyra is way more threatening, but in some ways, not really, right? Like, it's actually the ability for Scarab God to plug the ground that actually makes it way more threatening. So,
Well, also with Lyra, like, as the red-black decks are currently configured, you can, like, them gaining 5 life is not necessarily just, like, game ending. Like, you can take a hit, you can take 2 hits and then draw something like an Unlicensed Disintegration. And then, like I said, you're basically like a mid-range Jund deck, so you can just start working away. Like,
Yeah, this was a point you brought up before we started recording that, the aggro decks we see in the current standard format aren't really just balls to the wall aggro decks. They're more of mid-range decks, really.
yeah, like this is something Phil's been talking about for years, I think, is that what he tends to favor playing are aggressive decks that are actually secretly mid-range decks with aggressive slants, right?
yeah, like that's what I always call them. It's just like aggressive mid-range decks where like my main thing that I've always said is like when you have an aggressive deck that can afford to flood out, like those are the decks you should always be looking at playing because they just can play every part of the game well.
Yeah, like it's funny because you don't really think about that, like, but it's so obvious, right? When you say it out loud, like if your aggressive deck can afford to flood, you should just play that deck because this means that it's better early than every other deck, and it's fine in the mid and late game then.
Yeah.
So
You dominate the early game and then you can you get to turn 5 and you can still actually play your game. Like obviously not everyone should play aggro, but like I prefer these decks, and when they're available, like it's going to take a lot for me to not be playing them.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you played Absent Aggro for almost 2 years straight, and that's all you played.
Yeah, and then I played Marta Vehicles for like 2 years straight.
It's similar, very similar deck in its approach. Its sideboard approach was basically the same, right? Like it would switch to this deck that could go late. It could play at a different angle.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like when you can play an aggressive deck that can like I don't like the normal transformational sideboards, but like if you can make your deck, if you can pivot from being like a medium deck to like a bigger deck, that is like very huge in like other creature matchups.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of going back to like threats, like so both Lyra and Scarab God are threatening, but I'm also curious about things like Rekindling Phoenix, which like you can't really like you don't have a clean answer to, really. You have to do some sort of combination. And can kind of stop you from winning in that like it's either a clock in the air or it's a free blocker every turn that you can't attack through.
I think this card's a really good example of a card that's very threatening for aggro decks.
And people have sort of fallen on both sides of the coin on this one of like, should we ignore it? You see people sticking red-black with no swamps, not extra contempts. And you also see people going a bit more red-black with more contempts. And the contempts are also for like Scarab Gods and stuff. But you see people like, there's been a wide variety of how much exile removal these red decks play. And it's how much do you think you can afford to play? How, like, I'm wondering how you interpret aggressive decks, not really neutering themselves, but like taking away some of their aggressive power to include these slower, more broad answers because of various things like this.
Well, that's just kind of the thing with the red decks. Like, there's so many good cards, and like between a Rekindling Phoenix and between Hazoret, that's why you see like a bunch of Hour of Glories popping up in sideboards, and that's just like a great card against basically every matchup because everyone's going to have something that you need to pick off that's huge, and you can't just deal with normal removal spells, which is a very weird place for Standard to be, where you absolutely need exile removal in almost every single matchup.
Yeah, it's funny because what you're kind of saying is, yeah, you don't have a choice, right? And to properly assess how to play an aggro deck in this format is also to kind of concede, well, I can't play the Flame of Keld's version of aggro right now. I need to have some form of answer, so I need to play the aggro deck that lets me go late, that can afford to flood because it gives me access to those answers, right?
Yeah, and just like Rekindling Phoenix is just such a phenomenal card. It's just like especially in the red mirrors, like you need 2 removal spells. You need to just, and if you don't draw them, it just sits there and you can never attack into it. Like,
yeah, you can't do anything. You're
just paralyzed.
Yeah,
like,
that card is insanely powerful. I think this is going to be a card post rotation that is wildly dominant, right?
Yeah, like as long as there are other red cards to go with it, like,
or red green, or like it doesn't need much.
Yeah, like it's just incredibly powerful, and like a lot of the exile removal is rotating, so
Yeah, and it sticks around as a hugely potent threat for aggressive decks. And again, what you're kind of talking about is it's a card that pivots in an aggressive deck, right? It can go late, it can be aggressive, it can block. In mirrors, it seems one of the best possible cards.
Yeah, it's just like it's a very efficient card for doing basically everything. Like
That's a heavy endorsement.
well, it just sits there and they can't attack into it. They have to have multiple removal spells. Sometimes they do, and that's fine. You probably were not winning that game anyway. Like when it's good, it's great. When it's bad, you were probably losing anyway.
Yeah, it's just like the litmus test for whether you win or not.
Yeah, but even when it's like not great, if my opponent spends 2 removal spells to get this thing off the board, that you're so much more likely to come back now.
Right. I mean, that could represent a window to come back.
Your next draw doesn't have to worry about one of those removal spells.
And that's just it. It's like if they use 2 removal spells on it, I'm either dead or like now I don't have to worry about those going up top and killing me. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's funny because right now when you think about, people have tried all these different really hyper aggressive all in sort of Wizard Lightning, Flame of Keld, Shock, Lightning Strike style decks, and they just haven't really caught on in the same way. Despite Mono Red doing so well over the past, in the last while. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on, what's sort of happening with this and like why Red Black now when Mono Red seemed to have won the last Pro Tour. So what's different?
I've played a fair amount of the Flame of Keld deck, and the reality of the situation is creatures are a lot better at closing than burn spells, which is bizarre to even think about. But the way the creatures are built right now, just creatures are much better at closing than burn spells.
Yeah, creatures are so resilient now. I guess the argument is that Scrap Heap Scourger is going to win this tournament. Again, another example of just an unbelievable creature.
Like, say your opponent's at like 9 and you're empty-handed. What do you want to draw? Glorybringer or Lightning Strike?
Yeah, Glory be. Not close. And I get the Scrap Heap that's in my graveyard back anyway, so that's already a Lightning Strike in my graveyard.
The creatures are just so efficient and so just like resilient that creatures are just better at winning, like finishing games than burn spells.
Yeah, so I think this is happening because the Flame of Keld version, it's pretty all in on like its interaction with Flame of Keld to like get the most out of its creatures, but like otherwise it's playing sort of medium to not great bodies early. Like Viashino Pyromancer gets in for 4 ideally, maybe just 2 off the trigger, and then it gets like blocked by something. And so like it's not actually as fast as it's built its deck to have to be. Because it's not playing a lot of answers for these threats that will stabilize their opponents, it needs to get under it, and it doesn't quite do it. And I just kind of bring this up because one of our points is like all of these cards that we're talking about being good at stabilizing, Scarab God, Lyra, Rekindling Phoenix, they can all be played before the opponent is really in a position to die. And so then they stabilize very quickly. But if you look at like red decks of the past, things like Become Immense, like Double Strike.
Atarka,
yeah, like Atarka red, or if you look at Foundry Street Denizen red, or even if you played Burn in Modern against some of these standard decks, they are faster, and so they don't need these like broad answers. And so you can kind of compare that too. Like, is what I'm worried about, like, how consistently is my opponent dead to like a draw step or 2 when they play this thing?
Right, like they play Scarab God on 5, and they're for sure just dead if they tap out to play it. Like the old red decks with Foundry Street Denizen, they had like you couldn't just tap out on 5 to play it, do nothing. You're just dead, like comically dead.
Yeah, because I think like a lot of people imagine the red deck currently to be a bit more. Yeah, they're thinking of it like, oh, it's an aggro deck. They have it stuck in their head like it's an aggro deck, not like Phil was saying that it's mid range. Because it's not uncommon for people to play Scarab God on 5 and they're between 9 and 12 life. Whereas in the past, against really aggressive decks on turn 5, you're between like 0 and 5.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, and traditionally, those red decks of the past you mentioned, they're more often go wide red decks than the deck we see now, where you play one massive threat, and we don't have 6 creatures on the board.
Right. It's the difference is Goblin Chain Whirler versus Hordling Outburst. Right. Before we went wide with a bunch of idiots. Now we play one efficient threat, which basically is, that's why they're mid-range decks, right? Like they're...
Yeah. And like Atarka Red was a bit of an anomaly because it wanted to go wide, but then it could also just like one-shot you with Teamer Battle Rage become immense. But yeah, that was very much a go wide creature deck and then like have the burn spells to do the last few points. Whereas now we just have these good creature decks that have some burn spells in them.
Yeah, they just happen to have some incidental burn spells, you know?
Yeah, like the creatures are just so efficient just across the board that like you're using like your lightning strikes and your unlicensed as your last 3 points of damage, as opposed to like being like, I just drew like 3 running burn spells to kill them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it also makes sense then for what you're saying about, yeah, maybe in this conversation, I'm convinced that red black will dominate then this Pro Tour, if only because, you know, if it is the case that you're right, that it operates more as a mid-range deck, but an aggressively slanted one, that means it can shift its numbers just like you were saying. Well, people who haven't adopted, say, cut ribbons in their deck are just, they haven't adapted yet. They don't know. But, you know, presumably at the Pro Tour, people have figured this out that, you know, normally I can't beat Land of War Elf into Steel Leaf Champion. Well, you know, I've cut ribbons in my deck now. It's fine. You know, I have reach. I have Glorybringers in my deck main.
Yeah.
You know, I'm bigger. I can deal 4. I can attack in the air. I have reach with cut to ribbon. So, yeah, it's interesting that, you know, you can totally, because, you know, before, when you think of something like a Tarka Red or the kind of Foundry Street Denizen red deck with like, I don't know, Realm Master at the top or something, right? It was sort of like, that was it. You know, that was what they had. And there weren't flex slots. You know what I mean?
Red black is just like, as a deck, it just like checks all the boxes for me. Like there's so many like good cards that you just adapt to what you are expecting to play. You can afford to flood out. You have this great aggressive plan, but you also have a great mid-range plan. Like you just have everything I want in a good standard deck.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that sort of like what it seems like you're kind of saying is like the best aggressive decks are the ones that have flex slots almost. You know what I mean? They're not priced into saying like I have to flame a Keld Wizard lightning you out, or like I don't know what my deck's doing.
The best aggressive decks don't look like aggressive decks.
Yeah. And I think part of it is from the opponent's side, you know, because we've talked about this from like the red side, but from the opponent's side, it makes it difficult to sideboard, right? Like
that's also like, that's what I was saying like previously is like the big advantage of red black was you never know which red black deck you're playing against, because there were like a lot more aggressively built red black decks. There were much more like slower red black decks. So you would have to go into every game being like hyper aware of like the context clues, or you would just misboard and just either get run over by slow cards or get grinded out by planeswalkers. Like
there was an example I heard about on a different podcast where someone was talking about they had played a game against red black and they doomfalled their opponent's hand, and they saw a Hazaret and a Contempt among other cards, but there was a Hazaret and a Contempt, and then they debated on this podcast for a while about like, from that, can you tell what red version they are? It turned out that they were both one-ofs, and he was like some weird mid-range red-black deck, but they were arguing that like, no, Contempt is a bigger tell than Hazaret because everyone plays some number of Hazarets. But yeah, it's this like minor thing. Like I saw one card in my opponent's hand and when I doomfalled, I have to now guess like correctly what red-black version they're on, or I will sideboard wrong.
I think that's a pretty easy spot to figure out what version they're on, because if you're playing a card like Vraska's Contempt in your red-black deck, you have to make concessions in your mana, which means you're playing more red-black dual lands, which means you're playing Cinder Barons, which means you're probably not playing Bomat Courier. So
yeah, like it's not incredibly like that difficult, but it's still like one entire, like you saw one card and you don't have to play entirely different than you would have if you didn't see that card.
Yeah, I think one of the other issues though is like I think Glorybringer is like one of the big elephants in the room though to sideboard against, because you're like, you know, do I need to bring in removal that stops this from, you know, like instant speed? I need to have like it even affects how you play post board games. Like how many Glorybringers do they have? Like am I going to die to Glorybringer? Like what if they don't even have it, you know? Like, and it just really screws up how you play, because like Phoenix is different. They like play Phoenix. Okay, it's there. I can, you know, but Glorybringer changes how you address and how you sideboard. Like, but Phoenix also a problem. Like there's so many cards they can have that affect how you play your turn, and I think that's what makes the deck so scary.
Well, it's that, and like all the like elite red threats just tax your removal in such weird ways. Like the black decks have to play 4 Vraska's Contempts because of the red decks, which you just normally wouldn't expect, because you would expect the red deck to be slow, like low to the ground and fast.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like you need to have Vraska's Contempt for Chandra, Rekindling Phoenix, Glorybringer, Scrap Heap Scrounger. Just the way the red decks are built are just, it's such a tax on you.
Yeah. And, you know, you never really know what they're doing post board anymore. You know, this happened back when Mardu Pyromancers was played. Mardu Vehicles was doing really well in Standard as well. You know, they're very aggressive game one, and then they're, you know, really, like, they're playing a bunch of Planeswalkers post board, and they're going really mid range. And now, you know, you have mono red decks that are staying very low to ground after the sideboard, but you also have the option to go much more mid range with red black after sideboard. So it makes it that much harder for on the other side of the table to know what you should be doing and what cards you should be playing to theoretically stabilize yourself against these decks. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was curious about this. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, because Phil mentioned that, like, yeah, all the black decks have to play 4 contempts, but generally, like, the black decks in the format are either like Esper Control, blue black mid range. Like the black decks they're all mid range decks, and they're completely happy playing a lot of removal. They'll play like 12 creatures and then all removal. They'll play some Moment of Cravings and some Doomfalls and some Contempts, and they'll play pushes, and they'll play Commit, and they'll just play a lot so that they have the spread against everything. And that, I guess, was a sort of another motivating example for this whole topic of kind of how much, like, you have limited slots for removal spells in your aggressive deck because or in your mid-range aggro-slanted mid-range deck, because you still need all those rooms for creatures and threats. So, like, off the topic of, like, big things that will kill you, how do you choose between, like, Fatal Push or Magma Spray? Or, like, how do you... and I guess this is the similar of, like, choosing Cut to Ribbons because green is popular. You just need to, like, kind of have a target. But is there types of those effects you prefer going into sort of blind metas?
Well, like, for the argument of, like, Fatal Push versus Magma Spray specifically, I think that's mostly just, like, what colors, like, what is the base color of your deck? Because I think they're basically similar in that regard. Because I don't think it's very... it's going to come up often that, like, you're exiling creatures and you absolutely need to. But basically, if you're going into a blind format, you just get to play, like, the most generic removal spells possible. And, like, so you just, like, load up on, like, unlicensed disintegrations, like abrades, because you just assume that you're going to want to kill something. There's always Aether Sphere Harvesters out there. There's always Godfarer's Gifts out there. Like, so you're always picking, like, your generic removal spells until you have a target. And then you can start to specialize.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you sort of have, like, your standard, like, you have to play these cards, and then you can sort of take generic answers to begin with, right?
Yeah, like, once you know what you're playing against, like, there's always going to be, like, narrow removal spells that in a given tournament are going to be better than others.
Yeah. So for you, like, in red black, what are the cards you refuse to not play 4 of?
Bomat Courier, Goblin Chain Whirler. That's probably it. Scrap Heap Scrounger. Yeah, like, Scrap Heap Scrounger is just, like, the best card in Standard for the entirety of the time it's been in Standard. But, like,
yeah, you were over at my place on our place on Sunday night, and you said something I thought was funny. You said, you know, because of your kind of argument that red black's actually a mid range deck, that you were disappointed, and I thought this was funny that you said Scrap Heap Scrounger didn't even see enough experiment and play in its time in Standard. Yeah. Which is, like, hilarious to think, right? Because it's one of the most dominant Standard cards we've seen in all of Magic.
If anything, I think Scrap Heap Scrounger has been underplayed.
Like, that's wild, you know. But the more, you know, if you're going to make the argument that, well, actually, you know, it goes in mid-range decks, was your argument that it should have been tried in more mid-range decks and experimented with in more mid-range decks, at least in sideboards as 4 ofs, for a lot of matchups.
Yeah, like, it's just such an efficient card against the matchups that, like, against matchups that you're normally sideboarding for. Like,
yeah, like,
when you're boarding in a bunch of cards like Duresses and Doomfalls, like those are matchups where you want to be having Scrap Heap Scrounger. So I think it's probably been underplayed relative to how actually good the card is.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about. It's
noted underplayed card, Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Like, the one card that's top 8'd the most Pro Tours in its entirety of being in standard.
And, I mean, it's going to top 4 this one, right? Like, it has
I
to.
wouldn't be surprised.
Because it's either going to be in the green deck or the red decks. You know what I mean? So what was the option? Bolus decks and controls are the only, or in control decks are the only ones in the top 4. There's no way.
No.
Like Scrap Heap is in this top 4. It's
Oh,
just
for sure.
it's just a question of whether it's 16.
It's his last hurrah.
I think there's an argument to be made that you could be playing Scrap Heap Scroungers in the Grixis decks.
Yeah, I could see that. I could actually believe that.
Like you just play like a bunch of Glint Sleeves, Champions, Nicol Bolas, then you have like another creature, and then you're at like 20.
And you get to discard it to champion
Yeah.
and get it back. You know, when your creatures die naturally, which they're going to in that deck.
Like I think if you feel the need to be a bit more aggressive as opposed to just like a slow grindy deck, then like Scrap Heap Scrounger looks great in that deck.
Yeah, it's easy on the mana. I think that, so I've been saying for a while that I think that Bolus will end up shining. Like right now, I think one of the things that makes Bolus offensive is Liliana. Like that's what makes one of the multiple things that makes Bolus so good.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the whole reason that blue-black is playable is now you have that, like, trinity of Liliana, Death's Majesty, Nicol Bolas, Scarab God. Like,
Yeah.
that is a very unholy trinity.
Yeah. Getting back Bolus in multiple ways, you know what I mean? Just recurring Bolus is so devastating. But these are really grindy decks. But I've been sort of advocating for finding a way. I'm not sure how to do it, but to make the Bolus decks more aggressive. Because I think that that's a card that once you start talking about taxing their removal and just taxing what they can do, which means putting them under pressure, right? When Scrap Heap Scrounger does that, then Bolus's they discard a card becomes a lot more threatening, right? Than in a sort of, well, we're both these mid-range value decks. Like, we'll get the cards back eventually. Like, I'm not under immediate duress. Like, I'm not going to die.
I mean, there have been decks doing that already. There's consistently one copy of a Grixis Chain Whirler deck that plays Bolus in every 5-0 on Moto.
Yeah, no, I know. I think that deck
Yeah.
sucks, though. Yeah.
Isn't that what you just said you think would be good?
Yeah, none of them play Scrounger, right?
No, they all play Scrounger.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I
Yeah.
played against like some online that just play like,
Let me find it.
all I saw out of that when I played against it was like Chain Whirler, Glint Sleeve, Champion. Like, it was weird. Like, I just saw a bunch of like normal plus whatever. But yeah, like playing, I think the aggressive versions, if they can find a way to build it where they can produce enough pressure, I guess. That's the problem. I think they're probably torn between tension right now where they're trying to produce enough
Yeah,
pressure.
see, this deck right here, Soul Scar, Carries Ev, Scrap Heap, Chain Whirler, Pia, Nicol Bolas, Glorybringer, Scarab God, Chandra.
Well, that's just like the red-black deck with
Yeah.
with Nicol Bolas as opposed to like the blue-black kind of version that we've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
discussing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
But yeah, like this is the more
So
aggressively slanted.
yeah,
Bolus
that
deck.
I like.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about like Scarab God being in it, but like I'd just swap those bad boys out for Glorybringers and get in there.
Yeah, I mean, you could also do that. It's just, diversifying your game-ending threats, I guess.
yeah, I mean, who cares what your 5-mana
Both will
card
probably
is
win.
because you're just going to play it and win the game. Like,
Yeah, I think like you could probably even play Scrap Heap Scrounger though in the like slow version. You know what I mean?
yeah, like I think you change your deck up a bit, but like you have to play a few more creatures, but you don't need to be a dedicated creature deck to have Scrap Heap Scrounger in your deck. Is kind of the point I was trying to make.
Right, because you only need 1 or 2 to make the value worth it.
Yeah, and like especially when you're playing like these mirrors, a lot of the removal comes out. Like a lot of the small removal comes out because it's obviously bad. So that Scrap Heap's probably going to punch for like 6, maybe 9, and then like a Nicol Bolas is going to die, or like you're going to discard some creature to their Nicol Bolas, and then bring it back, kill their creature, keep coming.
That's interesting. I like that idea. Definitely.
Man, this is wild.
Too bad that we only have like a couple months to play with Scrap Heap anymore.
Yeah. It's crazy how dominant this card was. You know what I mean? And so good that we're sitting here like, you probably could have played it in this. Like, you should have been playing it in this. And there were questions of like, do people play mono green or, do you splash black for Scrounger? It's like, no, you obviously splash black for Scrounger.
Like all the great works of art in human history, it's discussed academically for far after it's published.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Scrounger for a while, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just every time I think about its like results, I think about that list, right? That guy published where it was like the other 4 cards that have sent 32 copies or whatever, right, into a top 8. And it was like, well,
The absolutely broken cards.
Nah, it wasn't Jar. It was, but it was like all just like busted. Cause Soul Ring. You know what I mean? Like, it was all like obnoxious vintage fast mana.
It was like
and scrap.
Wasteland, Port, and like something else.
Yeah, and then like 2 like artifact mana.
Yeah, and then Scrounger.
And then Scrounger. It's like so ridiculous. Like, I don't know how this card. Not banned though, because it's fair.
Yeah, well, it doesn't feel like it's the card that's beating you.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It absolutely is. But like, you don't look at it the same way you look at a Hazoret, a Chandra, a Glorybringer, a Rekindling Phoenix.
It isn't killing you in the most obvious way like those cards are.
It's just softening you up for the big boys.
Yeah, like the 6 or 9 damage it got in early.
Yeah, it was nothing.
or the 3 or 6 damage it does to end it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won a lot of games. Like, I didn't play Scrappy Scrounger decks for like the last 2 years because I'm an idiot, I guess, and I was just playing dumb bad decks. Yeah.
True.
Can confirm.
But online, I've been playing a lot of Scrap Heap Scrounger lately, and like it's just so ridiculous. Like, yeah, you just trade a bunch of resources with your red deck, and somehow you end up in a top deck mode versus like some Grixis deck, and then you just bring back 2 Scroungers and smash for 6 twice, and they're dead. And like, it just feels ridiculous. And I'm obviously just preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
I'm always late to like realizing these like aggressive cards are good. And I'm like, damn, this card's nuts. Have you guys seen this thing? Like, it was like, remember when I cast Glorybringer like a year into it being legal? And I was like, holy crap, did you guys know how good this card was?
Yeah, we've killed quite a few things with it.
I was like, I always just like disallowed it and moved on with my life. But it turns out it's actually nuts in like any creature matchup.
All right, man. Well, we're coming up on 70 minutes, and I know Phil's going to yell at us afterwards because it went so long.
Can't believe you would dare post a podcast over an hour.
It's like most, you complain about it all the time if we go over an hour. Most podcasts these days are like 3 hours long.
You'll note that I will never listen to any of those podcasts.
Not even going to listen to this one.
I've already listened to it.
But we do have a blowout this week. I have one from when we drafted the core set last week. I was playing green-white. Green-white kind of just big dumb idiots and enchantments because I had the green-white enchantment dude. And I'm playing against a guy who's playing like 4-color Sarkhan's Unsealing. And I 2-0'd him. He had Sarkhan's Unsealing both games, but game 1 was the best part where I had to suit up my turn 2 Druid of the Cowl with an Oaken Form and just start bashing with a 4/6 because the rest of my hand was like a 5-mana 5/5 Vigilance guy, and that was it. So I played that on turn 5 and smashed him, get him down to 8. And he finally stabilizes with the Sarkhan's Unsealing, but can't kill any of my dudes because they have 5 and 6 toughness. So he would just chip off my 3rd creature. Whenever I draw a 3rd creature, he just kept chipping it off because he had a 4-power guy every single turn. And there's like slowly started smashing me away. And then finally, the one turn, he puts me to 4 and chooses not to kill my 3rd creature on board. I cast the Declare Dominance that was in my hand the entire game and kill him immediately because all of his creatures have to block 1 guy, and then I can get in for the remaining like 9 damage to get him. And he's just like, I cast it, and he looked at it. He's like, oh man. He's like, I thought I had enough blockers. Just playing as safe as he possibly can, leaving enough blockers back to make sure he doesn't die. And then
I hate cards like that, and I hate getting punked out by them so much. I hate them so much. It always feels so bad when your opponent casts an all must block.
Oh, yeah.
It just feels like you got cheated, because you're like, why would I play around this dumb card?
Oh, man, I cheesed that win so hard.
I mean, how do you? Like, you have to be, your only option to play around cards like that is to be in a position that's, you can attack for lethal, like over lethal enough that Stelly has to throw away enough creatures that card doesn't kill you.
Yeah, no, it's just the deck building price you pay for putting a do nothing in your deck from when you're behind, right? Like that's what those cards are, right?
Yeah.
They're 0 and 10s. I can just see Phil's grimace too because he hates cards like this.
Wrong. I love Declare Dominance.
Yeah, I knew you would like that one because it's like a dumb smart card.
It's like Overrun, except for
You
it's
just
way
win.
worse,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
interact with it.
See, I think sleep sucks in limited too, so like I can't be trusted.
You're nuts.
We don't even look at the game the same way. I don't think you play the same game I do.
Yeah, sleep sucks. It's like
Yeah.
saying Imaginary Threats was good. Remember that card?
I have played literally every version of Sleep, and I will happily do it.
Yeah, bad card's bad.
I
I'm the one out here. I
Yeah.
realize this, but you guys are just filthy casuals who don't know how to draft.
I realize that you're trolling us just by bringing up imaginary threats.
I mean, the same card.
Yeah.
They're both blue. And they both cost 4 mana.
Yeah, they're both unplayable.
And they both end up with creatures tapped and someone dead.
True.
Imagine class declare dominance against Sleep, though. That's what I want to see.
I don't understand. Aren't they both sorceries?
Oh, is Sleep? Oh, yeah, Sleep's sorcery. Oh, see,
Yeah.
You thought it was an
Imaginary
instant and you thought it was bad?
Threats? Yeah, no, I was thinking of imaginary threats. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
an instant. So I like forgot in my head.
Yeah, because you have to cast on there.
See, that card's way better. It's an
Yeah, their
instant.
turn. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Gal, stop trolling.
All right. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. Great content on their site, mtgcanada.com. Articles, other podcasts, everything. It's great. Check them out. However you listen to this podcast, whether it's on Podbean, iTunes, your podcast app, share it with your friends. Rate it. Leave a review. Everything helps the podcast grow. And if you want to get in contact with us, you can find us on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 or on Facebook at the Disorganized Wizard Club Podcast. Shoot us a message. We love hearing from people. Send us your blowouts. We'll tell them on the show. And
Thanks for joining us, Phil.
Now,
I miss you.
I know, Phil, you said that you're not going to listen to this episode, but you best still leave it a like.
Don't worry, I'll make sure to comment on the title and how much I hate it. Especially if it's a really bad pun, Cam.
My titles are great.
We'll just call it a really bad pun.
Oh, yeah. That's just the name of the title.
F you, Phil.
We'll catch y'all next week.